The twin suns of Tarian 7 were setting, casting a red-orange glow across the burning cities. Smoke twisted into the sky like black snakes, and the sound of explosions echoed through the valleys. The people ran in panic, clutching their families, screaming, praying, anything to survive. The Zirath, a ruthless alien race, had arrived without warning. Their war machines cut through Tarian 7's defenses like blades through paper. Nothing, it seemed, could stop them. In the central command center, Commander Leora Kale sat hunched over the communication console. Her hands trembled as she tapped the emergency beacon again and again. The lights on the console blinked red, warning that time was running out. "Please, someone answer," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, anyone." Her officers glanced at her with fear in their eyes. Many of them were young, barely trained. Yet they had been thrown into this nightmare. Some were already crying. The command center itself was shaking from distant explosions, the walls trembling as if the planet itself were in pain. One young officer, barely older than a child, spoke in a trembling voice. "Commander, they say humans are different. They say they fight like no other species, that nothing can stop them." Leora's heart clenched. She had heard whispers about Earth, rumors of an unstoppable civilization that had survived wars, plagues, and cosmic catastrophes. But legends rarely mattered when your world was burning. Still, she had no choice. She activated the interstellar communication system and composed the message herself. Her fingers hovered for a moment, trembling. Then, with a deep breath, she sent it. "This is Tarian 7. We are under attack. Our defenses have failed. Civilians are dying. If any species can help us, if any species can save our world, Earth, we beg you, please answer." The console beeped in confirmation. The message was traveling across hundreds of light years, racing through the darkness of space. Leora felt her chest tighten with hope and fear. Could they really come? Could the humans be as powerful as the legend said? Or had those tales been exaggerated over centuries? Outside, the fires continued to spread. Buildings that once glittered under the twin suns were now nothing but ashes and twisted metal. The cries of the wounded filled the air, mingling with the roar of Zirath war machines. Leora closed her eyes for a moment and remembered the words of her father, a soldier long gone in another war. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act even when you are afraid. Her choice was clear. She could not give up. Not when her planet, her people, were at the mercy of an unstoppable enemy. She turned to her officers, their faces pale but determined. "We have sent the call," she said firmly. "Now we wait, and when they come, we will fight with everything we have until help arrives." The young officer whispered, "Do you really think they will come?" Leora looked out at the burning horizon, at the flames consuming her home. Her eyes glimmered with tears but also with determination. "I don't know," she admitted. "But if anyone can save us, it is them. Earth will answer." I believe that, and so Tarian 7 waited. The twin suns sank below the horizon, leaving the world in the darkness of smoke and ash. The night was long, filled with fear and uncertainty. But somewhere across the galaxy, the message raced through space, and somewhere out there, humans received it. They had been called A's passed on Tarian 7, each one heavier than the last. Fires burned unchecked, and the Zirath moved with cold precision, destroying everything in their path. Soldiers fell, cities crumbled, and despair wrapped the planet like a suffocating fog. Commander Leora Kale and her officers fought tirelessly, but every victory was temporary, every hope fleeting. Then, without warning, the skies darkened. At first, the people thought it was another attack, another wave of Zirath ships. But this was different. The shapes in the sky were immense, stretching across the horizon, moving with a speed and coordination that no one had ever seen. "What is that?" one soldier whispered, eyes wide with awe. From the depths of space, the human fleet appeared. Thousands of ships, each larger and more powerful than any vessel the Tarionians had ever imagined, filled the sky. Some glimmered like silver mountains. Others blazed with energy shields that shimmered in blue and gold. The fleet moved as one, perfect in formation, silent yet terrifying. Commander Leora felt her breath catch. She ran to the observation window of the command center, staring in disbelief. They came for us," she said, almost to herself. Her voice was barely audible, but hope sparked in her heart for the first time in days. The humans' flagship, Supreme Sentinel, descended into orbit. Its hull gleamed with a strength that seemed unbreakable, and from its command deck, Admiral Karavos watched the planet below. She was calm, her face unreadable, but every movement carried authority. Every decision made in those moments would bring life or death. On the ground, Terrionians fell to their knees. Children clung to their parents, elders prayed silently, and soldiers lowered their weapons, unable to comprehend the presence of such power. The humans had not come in small numbers, not for diplomacy, not for parley. They had come to end the threat. The Zerath, on the other hand, were confused. Their commanders barked orders, trying to organize a response. "Impossible," one of them hissed, scanning the fleet. "This cannot be. The humans are too strong." The first strike came suddenly. Energy beams lanced through the sky, vaporizing entire waves of Zerath warships before they could fire. Explosions painted the heavens with fire and smoke, yet there was a precision to every human attack that was almost surgical. Nothing innocent was harmed. Nothing unnecessary was destroyed. Commander Leora's hands shook as she watched the destruction unfold. "They are incredible," she whispered. Tears streamed down her face, not from fear but from relief. They had been called. And now, the legends were real. Admiral Voss did not speak to the Terrionians yet. Her focus remained on the enemy, every move calculated. She understood the stakes. Failure was not an option. The Zerath had taken life without mercy, and now the humans would repay it in full measure. On the planet below, the surviving civilians watched in awe. The humans were not just saviors, they were a force of nature, unstoppable, deliberate, and terrifying. Every ship, every weapon, every maneuver told a story. Life was precious, and those who destroyed it would face annihilation. For Commander Leora, hope bloomed where there had only been despair. She knew the humans had come not to negotiate but to protect, to defend, and to ensure that Terrion 7 would survive, and for the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself to believe that her world might live. The fleet hovered above, a shield and a hammer. The Terrionians had called for help, and now what had arrived was more than help. It was justice incarnate, a storm of power that would change their world forever. The sky over Terrion 7 was alive with fire. The human fleet moved with precision, striking the Zerath forces like a storm no one could escape. Explosions ripped through the clouds, sending shockwaves across the planet. For the first time, the people of Terrion 7 felt hope. Yet hope came with fear, because even humans, unstoppable as they seemed, could not stop the relentless Zerath alone. Commander Leora Kale watched from the observation tower of the Central Command. Her eyes were wide with both terror and awe. "They are incredible," she whispered, her voice trembling. She could see entire waves of enemy warships vaporized before they even reached orbit. Yet the Zerath did not surrender. Their desperation only made them more dangerous. On the ground, Terrionian soldiers fought bravely, inspired by the humans above. They no longer fled in terror. They held positions, coordinated attacks, and tried to protect civilians. Children huddled in shelters, eyes wide as flashes of light lit the horizon. Families clung to each other, praying, hoping that these strangers from across the galaxy could truly save them. High above, Admiral Kara Voss commanded the fleet with calm determination. Her voice was steady as she issued orders. "Target their command ships. Protect civilian zones. No mistakes, each word carried authority. Each maneuver was perfect. The humans struck only where necessary, yet their power was absolute. The Zerath soon realized that the stories of human strength were not exaggeration. They were a warning. The battle intensified. Zerath warships launched energy storms, missiles, and massive shockwaves. Yet the human fleet absorbed, deflected, and retaliated with terrifying efficiency. Ships that had once been feared as the pinnacle of Zerath engineering were destroyed in moments. The horizon glowed with fire and energy as fleets collided in a symphony of war. Commander Leora's heart pounded. She had never imagined seeing such a display of power. Yet even as the humans fought, there was no cruelty in their strikes. They moved with a strange honor, targeting only enemies, protecting the helpless. Civilians below looked up, mouths open in awe, and whispered prayers of gratitude. Amidst the chaos, a massive Zerath warship, larger than any other, attempted to break through the human lines. Its weapons were capable of obliterating entire cities in seconds. Panic swept across the ground forces. Leora's stomach churned. This could be the end of Terrion 7, Admiral Voss noticed immediately. Her eyes narrowed as she gave precise commands. Swift fighter squadrons tore through the enemy's defensive shields. Bombardments targeted its engines. Energy beams from the Supreme Sentinel cut through the warship like a knife through steel. The Zerath vessel shuddered, groaned, and then exploded in a brilliant flash that lit the night. The Terrionians gasped. Leora could not hold back her tears. They saved us, she whispered, her voice choked with relief. They actually saved us. Around her, soldiers fell to their knees, too overwhelmed to speak. Civilians cried tears of joy even as smoke still filled the air. Yet Admiral Voss did not celebrate. She continued scanning the horizon, preparing for the next wave. The humans did not stop, they would not stop until the threat was gone. Each strike, each movement showed a clarity of purpose that was frightening in its intensity. Humans were not just fighters. They were protectors, judges, and warriors all at once. For Terrion 7, the battle was terrifying. But it was also a revelation. Hope had arrived in the form of humans, a force that no enemy could ignore, a promise that even in the darkest hour, life could be saved by those willing to fight with courage and honor. And as the horizon burned with the fire of battle, Commander Leora realized that the humans were not here to negotiate. They were here to end the war and ensure that no one would suffer needlessly again. The battle over Terrion 7 had slowed, but the sky still shimmered with smoke and fire. The Zerath forces were in retreat, scattered and broken. On the ground, survivors emerged cautiously from shelters. They were afraid to hope, yet they could not help but watch the humans above with awe. Commander Leora Kale was escorted to the Supreme Sentinel, the human flagship. Her heart raced as she entered the enormous bridge. The interior was sleek, shining yet warm in its own way. Machines hummed with life, panels glowed with information, and humans moved with quiet efficiency. Never a gesture wasted, yet always aware of those around them. At the center of it all stood Admiral Kara Voss. Her presence was calm, her eyes sharp, and her voice carried authority even in silence. Leora expected pride, maybe arrogance, but there was none. Only purpose, only focus, Commander Kyle, Voss said, her tone even but firm. We have neutralized the immediate threat. Your planet is safe, for now. Leora bowed slightly, unable to find words. I don't understand, she whispered. Why come like this? Why bring such destruction instead of negotiating? Voss's eyes softened as she looked at her. Negotiation only works with those willing to listen. Some species cannot be reasoned with. Some threats do not answer words, they answer strength. We act not for conquest, not for glory, but to protect life. That is our code. The words sank into Leora's heart. She looked out at the planet where fires still burned and felt a mix of awe and fear. Humans were not just powerful, they were deliberate. Every action they took, every strike they delivered had a reason. They destroyed the enemy without harming the innocent. They brought terror to those who deserved it, and safety to those who needed it. Around them, Terrionian officers and civilians watched silently. Some wept quietly, others stared in disbelief. They don't just fight, one young soldier whispered. They protect. They care. Voss nodded once. We are what we choose to be. Power without purpose is meaningless. Strength without honor is empty. The human code is simple. Protect those who cannot defend themselves and end threats that harm life without hesitation. That is how we survive, and how we ensure the galaxy survives with us. Leora felt tears blur her vision. She had seen humans destroy entire fleets, yet she also saw them saving lives in every moment. They were terrifying and kind at the same time. They were unstoppable and compassionate. The paradox filled her with both hope and humility. We have never seen anything like this, Leora said softly. Not even in the legends. Your power, your purpose, it is beyond words. Voss gave a small nod, her gaze moving back to the planet below. Legends are only stories until they are proven. We act when needed. That is all. You called and we came. That is enough. For the first time since the attack began, Leora felt true relief. The humans had not come to dominate, to take, or to judge. They had come to save. And in doing so, they had shown her a vision of what a civilization could be when strength was paired with honor, and action was guided by conscience. Outside, Terrion 7 slowly began to breathe again. Survivors started rescuing each other, tending to the wounded and clearing rubble. They moved cautiously, but there was a renewed energy in the air, a spark of hope that had almost been lost. Commander Leora stood tall, looking at the humans with deep respect. We called for help, and what arrived was not just help. It was something greater. It was a lesson in courage and strength and in what it truly means to fight for life. Admiral Voss watched silently, understanding the weight of Leora's words. In that moment, the Terrionians did not just see humans as warriors. They saw them as a standard of what a determined species could achieve, a force that acted with honor, purpose, and unstoppable resolve. And as night fell over the planet, Leora realized something profound. Humanity's arrival was not merely salvation, it was a promise. A promise that life, no matter how threatened, could always find protectors willing to fight with both strength and conscience. The battle was over, but Terrion 7 still felt like a world caught between fire and shadow. The Zerath were defeated, but their destruction remained. Cities were leveled, forests burned, and the cries of the wounded echoed through the streets. Survivors moved slowly among the rubble, searching for loved ones, mourning those they had lost. The victory of humans had saved them, but the cost was heavy. Commander Leora Kale stood on a ridge overlooking the ruined capital. Her uniform was torn, her hands scratched and bleeding from debris. Her chest heaved with exhaustion, but her eyes shone with relief and gratitude. She had witnessed the humans in battle, and she had never seen anything like it. They were terrifyingly powerful, yet calm, precise, and merciful to those who needed protection. A young boy clutching a small dog ran up to her. "They saved us," he said, voice trembling. "They came, and now we're alive." Tears ran down his cheeks. Leora knelt and pulled him close, holding him as the wind carried the scent of smoke and ash. "Yes," she whispered. "They saved us. They really did." Even the soldiers, hardened by years of training and combat, were shaken. They had fought beside the humans, witnessing their strength and discipline firsthand. No one could deny the awe they felt. The humans had moved like a single organism, anticipating threats, striking without hesitation, and protecting life wherever possible. Their presence was both comforting and humbling. Leora walked through the streets where families had gathered around small fires. She saw mothers holding children, whispering prayers, and men staring silently at the wreckage of their homes. For the first time in days, people spoke of hope. The humans had not only saved their lives, they had rekindled their spirits. Yet amidst the relief there was sorrow. Terrion 7 had been scarred. Ancient buildings, monuments that had stood for centuries, lay in ruins. Fields that had once fed entire cities were blackened and lifeless. Leora realized that even with the humans' power, the cost of survival was never free. But she also understood something else. There was now a chance to rebuild, stronger than before, guided by the lessons of those who had saved them. Admiral Kara Voss walked beside her in silence, observing the aftermath. She did not speak of victory or pride. Her focus was on the lives saved, on the survivors, and on ensuring that Terrion 7 could rise again. "It's never easy," she finally said. "Even when you win, the scars remain. But the choice to act, that is what matters. You acted. You survived. You will rebuild." Leora looked at her with gratitude. "You didn't just save us," she said. "You taught us something, courage, and the strength to protect life no matter the cost." Voss nodded, her gaze scanning the horizon. "Every civilization has a choice," she replied. "We choose to protect. We choose to fight for what is right. That is the human way." Night fell over Terrion 7, but the people did not sleep. They sat together in small groups, comforting one another, telling stories of bravery and sharing memories of those they had lost. The humans had left an imprint not only on their cities but on their hearts. A spark of hope had been ignited, one that would burn long after the fires were gone. Leora climbed back to the ridge, looking up at the stars. Somewhere far away, the human fleet waited, ready to sail into the galaxy's next battle. She felt a deep gratitude not just for their power, but for their heart, their discipline, and their unwavering commitment to life. For Terrion 7, the humans were no longer just saviors. They were a symbol, a reminder that even in the darkest times, courage and action could change the fate of an entire world. And as she watched the last glimmers of fire fade into the night, Leora knew that even as Terrion 7 began to breathe again, a shadow lingered in the depths of space. The Zerath were defeated, yes, but not all were gone. A hidden fleet had retreated to a nearby asteroid field, gathering strength for one final strike. At its center lay a massive superweapon, capable of destroying the planet entirely. Commander Leora Kyle felt a chill as she watched the scans come in. She had thought the worst was over, that humanity's arrival had ended the war, but now she realized the Zerath still sought revenge, their hatred unchecked. They want to finish what they started, she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Admiral Kara Voss did not flinch. She had anticipated this. Prepare the fleet, she said calmly. We will end this threat completely. Nothing must remain to harm life again. Her words carried no arrogance, no pride, only certainty. To humans, the mission was clear: protect life at all costs and remove the danger entirely. The fleet moved like a living organism, ships weaving between asteroids with precision. Each human vessel protected the others, shielding weaker ships and civilians while striking at the enemy with unrelenting force. Missiles streaked through the void. Energy beams lit the darkness and explosions shook the asteroid field. The Zerath had hoped for chaos, but humans turned the field into a symphony of destruction. From the Supreme Sentinel, Admiral Voss guided the strike personally. Her commands were brief, direct, and flawless. Target the superweapons core. Avoid asteroid collisions. Protect civilians. Every instruction was executed instantly without hesitation. The Zerath flagship tried to escape, but every maneuver was anticipated. Their weapon, once a terror of the galaxy, was destroyed in moments. On Terion 7, Commander Leora and her people watched anxiously. They saw flashes in the sky, beams slicing through darkness, and entire enemy ships vanish in brilliant eruptions of fire. Tears ran down faces, but this time they were not only of sorrow, they were tears of relief, awe, and gratitude. Humanity was relentless, but it was precise, brutal yet merciful. The last Zerath vessels tried to flee, but the humans allowed no escape. Every attack was calculated, a perfect balance of strategy and purpose. In less than hours, the hidden fleet was annihilated. The galaxy had witnessed the final stand of the Zerath, and they had lost utterly. No one could deny the humans' might, nor their resolve. When the dust settled, silence returned to the asteroid field. Not a single Zerath ship remained. The humans hovered briefly, scanning the area to ensure no threat remained, then signaled the fleet to move on. Their mission was complete, but they did not linger for glory. Their presence was never about fear. It was about justice, protection, and duty. Leora felt a wave of emotion she could barely contain. She had seen her planet saved, the enemy defeated, and lives preserved. She had witnessed humans act with strength and compassion, fearlessly, decisively, and honorably. They were terrifying in power, yet inspiring in heart. She realized that this was the true face of humanity. Unstoppable when protecting life, yet merciful to those who deserved it. On the ground, civilians slowly came out of hiding. They helped one another, cleared rubble, and tended to the wounded. Children laughed for the first time in days, their eyes reflecting the light of the distant stars. Terion 7 had survived not by chance, but because humans had chosen to act. Admiral Voss looked toward the planet below. The galaxy will always have darkness, she said quietly. We will rise when it threatens life. We act so others may live. That is our code. That is what makes us human. Commander Leora stood beside her, feeling awe and gratitude. She realized the truth in those words. Humans were not just saviors. They were a standard of courage, strength, and honor that other species could aspire to. And she knew that Terion 7 would never forget the lesson they had learned that day. Even in the darkest times, life could be protected by those willing to stand, fight, and never waver. The sky above Terion 7 had cleared. Smoke drifted slowly toward the horizon, and the fires that had consumed the cities burned low, leaving charred ruins in their wake. Survivors emerged from shelters and rubble, their faces pale, their hearts heavy yet full of awe. The human fleet hovered briefly above the planet, silent and imposing before preparing to leave. Commander Leora Kale stood on a ridge overlooking the ruins of the capital. The weight of what had happened pressed on her chest. She had seen her world brought to the brink of destruction, and she had witnessed humans wipe out the enemy with a power she could barely comprehend. Yet in all of that, she felt something deeper than fear or gratitude. It was respect, a deep understanding of what humanity represented. They're leaving, a young soldier whispered beside her, eyes wide. Will they come back? Leora looked up at the stars where the fleet hung like a silver storm. Her heart swelled with emotion. Yes, she said softly, voice trembling, but not for glory. not for conquest. They come when life is threatened. They come when justice is needed. That is what makes them unstoppable. Admiral Kara Voss appeared on the observation deck, her presence calm and commanding. She did not speak of victory or pride. Her eyes scanned the planet, watching the people rise from devastation. "Our mission is complete," she said quietly. "Your planet is safe. Now it is yours to rebuild." Leora bowed her head, overwhelmed. "You didn't just save us," she said. "You showed us what courage truly means." Voss nodded once. "Strength is meaningless without purpose. Power is empty without honor. Humanity exists to protect, to act when life is in danger, and to stand when others cannot. That is why we came. That is why we fight." The humans had not lingered to celebrate. They did not demand thanks nor expect worship. Their presence was a statement, a lesson. Life is precious, and those who threaten it will face consequences beyond comprehension. The fleet's departure was silent but unforgettable. Each ship moved with perfect precision, a demonstration of might and mercy combined. On the ground, the survivors began to rebuild. They helped each other, shared food, and tended to the wounded. Children laughed quietly, peeking out from behind rubble, seeing a world that had almost been lost. Tarion 7 was scarred, but it was alive. And in that survival lay hope, a hope sparked by the humans' actions. Commander Leora looked at the stars long after the fleet disappeared. She thought of the humans' courage, their discipline, and their unwavering sense of purpose. They had not come as conquerors. They had not come for power. They had come to protect life and enforce justice. That lesson would never leave her people. It was etched into their hearts like the stars in the sky. Somewhere across the galaxy, the human fleet sailed onward, ready to answer the call wherever life was in danger. They were known as unstoppable, terrifying, and relentless, but for those who were helpless, they were salvation incarnate. To Tarion 7, they were no longer just legends. They were a standard of hope, courage, and strength that would inspire generations. Leora smiled through tears as she turned back to her people. "Remember this day," she said. "Remember what it means to act when others cannot. Remember that courage, honor, and action can change the fate of the world. Humanity has shown us that." And so Tarion 7 began to heal. The ruins became foundations for new cities. Fear gave way to hope. The story of the humans, the fleet of obliteration for the enemies of life, the fleet of salvation for those in need, would be told for centuries. Above the stars, the fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, leaving behind a galaxy that had learned a vital truth. To face humans was to face unstoppable strength, unwavering courage, and the uncompromising protection of life itself. For Tarion 7, and for every world watching silently from the cosmos, that was a promise no one would ever forget.